I now recognize the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Scott, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of points, and one has been made a couple of times. We just want to emphasize the effect of the Congressional Review Act is, if it passes, the entire rule is stricken as if it had never been issued. Now, you can't line item under the CRA. You have to knock out the whole rule. The whole rule included pause in payments and pause in interest. So if the rule is knocked out, there's no pause starting October 2022. And so people will be months in arrears, and the interest, which has not accrued, will be reinstated. That's the obvious effect of the Congressional Review Act. The second point I want to make is remind us why we're here. We're here because students have had to incur massive debt because of disinvestment on the part of the government. Several decades ago, the Pell Grant covered 80% of the cost of going to a state college, tuition, room, and board, 80%. They had to come up with 20%. Now that the Pell Grant covers only a third, all of the rest of that cost is on the student. States used to pay 2/3 of the cost of the state college. Now it's less than 1/3 on average. All of that has occurred, has meant that students have had to incur debt to achieve a college education. This little relief, $10,000 or $20,000 if you'd received a Pell Grant, goes to cover a lot of people. It's somewhere in the order of magnitude of half of the students with student debt will have their entire debt wiped out. That means they no longer have to delay buying a house, starting a family because of this overwhelming, crushing debt. And we've had a lot of concern expressed. We didn't hear any concern about equity when the $1.9 trillion Trump tax cut passed, when 80% of the benefits went to the top 1% in corporations. There was no talk about equity and would transfer of wealth and things like that. There's no concern about paying back loans when wealthy businessmen got PPP loans. Members of Congress, some members of Congress got PPP loans in the range of $1 million. I didn't hear them complaining that they didn't have to pay it back. Those were forgiven. There's no concern about the requirement of paying back loans when you take them. There's no concern about running up the national debt. I think it's important to remind people that every Republican president since Nixon, the administration has left for the succeeding Democrats a worse deficit situation than they inherited. Every Republican administration since Nixon, without exception. Every Democratic administration since Kennedy has left for their Republican successors a better deficit situation than they inherited. President Trump was on the way to fulfilling that trend before the pandemic, and President Biden has already started chipping away at the deficit. So this student debt relief is a small step in the right direction. It helps a lot of people, and I think it's as equitable as we can get. But as we have heard, we need to look to the future in other legislation. The Loan Act significantly increases the Pell Grant so that students don't have to take out as much student loan and don't have to pay as much interest when they do take out those loans. That's something we could work on for the future. But for now, this Congressional Review Act is a step in the wrong direction. I hope it will be defeated. I yield back.